No one. Izuki sat on the ground as tears poured from his eyes. Izuku crouched in front of him with a small frown. Izuku gently kissed the red spot on Izuki's forehead. There, now it's all better. Izuku beamed. Izuki wiped his tears. Thanks, Aizu. Izuki sniffled. He took Izuku's hands and pulled himself up. The two brothers held hands and ran over to their father. Hisashi smiled and crouched down to their level. Ready to go, Aura. Oh, Izuki, you got hurt again. Hisashi frowned. I'm okay. Izuku made it better. Izuki smiled. Well then, let's get going, Hisashi said, picking them up. He placed each boy on each of his shoulders. The two boys giggled, enjoying their high view. Papa, when will we get to see Kaken again? Izuku asked. As soon as he comes back from his family trip, Hisashi told him. But that'll take forever. Izuku whined, making his father laugh. Papa, we're getting our quirks next year, right? What do you think they'll be? Izuki asked. I bet they'll be something super cool. Izuku grinned. I think you'll have my quirk since you're like your mother. Izuku will probably have your mother's quirk since he's like me. That is usually how it happens with twins. I also think that whenever you're together, you'll be stronger. Hisashi said, tapping his chin. There's no way you know that'll happen, Izuku said, tugging on Hyasahai's ear. I'm a scientist, of course I know. Hisashi gasped, dramatically making them laugh. Okay, I believe you. Izuku giggled. Do you really think we'll be strong together? Izuki asked. Of course I do. So make sure you always stay together and have each other's back. Got it. Hisashi looked up at them. Got it. Hisashi placed both boys in his car and got in the driver's seat. Izuki and Izuku talked about all the different heroes and how cool they'd be when they grow up. Eventually, Izuku exhausted himself and fell asleep in Izuki's lap. Izuki looked out the window and didn't recognize their surroundings. Papa? Where are we going? Izuki asked. Hisashi kept glancing at something in his rearview mirror. I thought I'd take you two to the lab with me. Hisashi smiled back at him. Izuki smiled, now excited, and Hisashi pulled out his phone. He dialed a number and placed the phone to his ear, hearing a click. Boss, they found me and I have my kids. We're heading your way. Be ready. Hisashi said in a cold tone. Yes, sir. Hisashi hung up and began swerving from lane to lane. Izuki held on tightly to Izuku as his father made quick and sharp turns. Izuki, I need you to listen to me. Huh? Izuki looked at him confused. No matter what happens, I need you to protect your brother, okay? When I'm gone, Izuku's gonna need you. You'll both need each other. Promise me that you'll protect each other no matter what. Hisashi suddenly said. Papa, what AR dash? Promise me, Izuki. Hisashi said sternly. Okay, I promise, Papa. Izuki nodded. Someone slammed into the back of the car, making them jerk forward. Izuku quickly woke up, now slightly panicked and confused. Huh? Papa, what's happening? He asked. There's some bad people trying to hurt me, but don't worry. I'll protect you boys, Hisashi said, swerving into the parking lot of an abandoned building. He quickly got out and grabbed the boys rushing inside. They passed several people who rushed outside and began attacking. Hisashi ran to a back room and placed them inside. Listen to me, okay? I need you to stay here. No matter what you hear, do not leave this room. Hisashi said, standing up. Papa, please don't go. Izuku panicked. Papa, I'm scared, Izuki cried. Hisashi smiled. Don't worry, I'll come back for you. Izuku already knew what his father was going to say and nodded. With that, he closed the door behind him as he left. Izuki clung to Izuku's shirt and buried his face in his chest. Izuku gently rubbed Izuki's back and quietly spoke to him. I have to be strong for Izuki. I'll protect him no matter what. Just like Papa told me, I'll never let anyone hurt him. Izuku hugged Izuki tightly and covered his ears. Izuku closed his own eyes as the building shook from various explosions going on around them. Screaming, thuds, and fighting could also be heard. The boys didn't know what was going on, but they didn't like it. Why were heroes after them? Where were they? Why are they fighting? Why is their dad involved? None of it made any sense. They were only kids. How could they understand? Izuku could feel Izuki trembling in his hold. Izuku moved them to a corner away from the windows. There was another explosion followed by a blood-curdling screech. It was all too much for Izuki, and he passed out as he shook violently. Izuku watched in horror as his brother's hair began turning white. Suddenly, everything stopped, and it became quiet. Too quiet. Izuku could hear noise at the door and held Izuki protectively. The door opened, and in stumbled Hisashi. He was holding his injured arm as black smoke left his mouth. Papa. Hisashi stumbled over and dropped to his knees in front of them. Thank God. You're both okay. Hisashi coughed and smiled, relieved. Papa. Izuku cried as Hisashi embraced him. Footsteps could be heard and Izuku tensed up. Hisashi quickly stood up to defend him and Izuku's eyes widened. Hisashi slowly looked down to see something protruding from his stomach. A large red feather. I'm as sorry, Izuku. I love you both. Hisashi managed to say. Izuku was completely frozen as his father lifelessly fell in front of him. His vision began to blur, and the last thing he saw was someone with large red wings walking away as he slipped into darkness. After the incident, both Izuku and Izuki were found unconscious near Hisashi's body. Inko was absolutely devastated, and the scientist's death was covered up. Rumors started to surface about the man, and there was talk that he was working with villains. The boys changed after that. Izuki started working to become stronger. He was going to protect his little brother. Izuku only changed for the worse. He now harbored a deep hatred for heroes and people alike. His attitude completely changed, and Bakugo along with Izuki looked up to him. Bakugo thought he was cool and started copying his actions. Izuku became violent and disrespectful. Inko and other adults just chalked it up to him acting out due to the loss of his father. In reality, they should have been extremely worried. Izuku would attack anyone who talked ill of his father. He'd beat them to the point of near death. Other kids were scared of him, so they'd just say they were attacked by a villain. It wasn't hard since in their eyes Izuku was a villain. To them, he was a monster. A year later, Izuku would become the monster everyone swore he was. This was only the beginning. Izuki, Grandma, Grandpa, guess what, my quirk finally came. I yelled, running towards the house. I got to the entryway of the house when I paused. I covered my nose as I fanned away the smoke. Wadash. My eyes widened, and I rushed inside the house. As I ran past a hall, I saw green. I stopped noticing Izuku and ran over to him. Izuku, what's going on? Are you okay? I shook him, but got no response. It was like he was frozen with zero emotion on his face. That's when I heard it. Their screams. I slowly turned around to see our grandparents trapped inside the room. The fire was everywhere, and it was surrounding them. Izuku, we have to help them. Why won't you say anything? Izuku, please help me. I yelled, panicked. Still getting no response, I tried to enter on my own. At that moment, Izuku grabbed me, preventing me from doing so. Izuku, let go. I need to help them. I pleaded. Izuku ignored me and pulled me further away from the door. No matter how much I struggled, I couldn't get free. I could only watch in horror as our grandparents burned to death. Part of the room caved in, and Izuku quickly picked me up and ran out of the house. I kicked and screamed for him to put me down, but he wouldn't listen. Why didn't you try to save them? Why didn't you do anything? I cried. Wasn't you? Was all Izuku said. No one. Izuki shot up from the bed, breathing heavily. He gripped the front of his shirt, calming himself. Why was I remembering this now? Izuki looked to his side to see Izuku looking at him, worried. I'm sorry, Aizu, did I wake you? Izuki smiled at him. Izuku shook his head. Morning. Izuki glanced at the clock to see it was 10 in the morning. He sighed, and both boys got up. After getting cleaned and dressed, they ate the breakfast Niza brought them. He had some things to do and asked them to accompany him so they don't get bored. His first stop was the Hero Commission office where the president was waiting. Boys, this is the commission's president, Heidi Tachibana. Nizu informed, earning a nod in response. Hello again, Nizu. Who are these young men? The older male asked. These are the young boys I've taken under my care. They're Izuki and Izuku Midoriya. Nizu introduced. It's nice to meet you, Izuki said as Izuku stood behind him. Midoriya? As in Hisashi Midoriya? Tachibana mumbled aloud. Both boys' expressions darkened, and the man felt a chill run down his spine. At the mention of their father, the aura around the boys turned deadly. What about him? Izuki asked coldly. Izuku kept his gaze on the man. Tachibana gulped as Izuku's emotionless orb swirled with bloodlust. I was a fan of his work. It's a tragedy that he's no longer with us. I'm sorry for your loss, Tachibana said truthfully. After a few seconds of silence, Izuki smiled. Izuku looked away, a bored look on his face. Really? I'm surprised you remember his work. It has been 11 years. Izuki commented. Nizu noted their change in demeanor, but spoke nothing of it. So why did you need to see me today? Nizu said, breaking the tension. Oh, right. We finished looking through the information you sent and have approved of the A-class's rosters. Tachibana said, handing Nizu the large folder. Thank you. I have to get going, but we should get tea sometime, Nizu said. Of course. The man waved as they left. After that, they continued to run errands with Nizu. Once done with that, they even helped him finish up some paperwork for the new school year. By the time Aizawa arrived, it was already late in the afternoon. You guys ready? Aizawa asked. Yup, Izuki said, grabbing their things. Yes. Izuku held Izuki's hand as he waved goodbye to Nizu. The principal watched them leave with a small smile. My home isn't much, but I hope you like it. I do have 2 cats named Mei and Yuki, Aizawa told them as he drove. It's okay, we aren't picky, and Izuku loves cats, so I'm sure he'll like it. Izuki smiled. I only have 1 bed in the guest room. If that's a problem, just let me know, and I'll fix it. Aizawa told them. He wanted everything to be perfect. He's never had to take care of kids before, so he wasn't sure if he was doing all right. Izuku climbs in bed with me while I'm sleeping anyways, so it doesn't bother me. Izuku told him. He could tell Aizawa was nervous. Izuku just watched the birds in the sky as they drove. He saw a baby bird struggling to keep up and decided to help it along. As the car turned in a different direction, Izuku had no choice but to leave the bird alone. They pulled into the driveway of a medium-sized one-story house. It was a bit secluded, but not much. It barely stood out, which is what Aizawa wanted. They got out of the car and followed the hero inside. He showed them where everything was before stopping at a room. This room is yours. You can rearrange it and decorate it however you want. Aizawa told them. A white cat walked in and immediately went over to Izuku. Kitty, Izuku said, gently picking them up. Thank you so much. We're both very grateful. Izuku bowed. It's all right, you don't have to thank me. Aizawa chuckled. You two can get washed up while I make dinner. How does beef yakisoba sound? He asked. We'd like that. Aizawa nodded and left the room. Izuku sat their bags down and happily sighed, laying down on the bed. Izuku copied his actions, making Izuku laugh a bit. I'll go run a bath. Wait here, okay? Izuku said, getting up. Izuku sat up. You with? He asked. Izuku smiled softly. Sure. Izuku knew it'd take Izuku a while to get used to the new home. He had been glued to his side more than usual, so it was inevitable. It's not like he minded. Izuku always had random episodes where he'd get more dependent than usual. Izuku couldn't deny that he didn't want to be away from Izuku for too long either. Especially not after that dream he just had. Izuku began running a bath in the surprisingly large tub. Aizawa said they could use anything, so Izuku grabbed the body wash and poured some in. They both needed a bubble bath. It always helps them relax. Once everything was ready, Izuku went back into the room. He grabbed their clothes and lightly shook Izuku, who fell asleep holding the cat. Come on, Aizu. Don't think wrong, they're just close, and this is normal to them. Expressionless face. Izuku yawned and got up, rubbing his eyes. They got to the bathroom and Izuku closed the door behind them. Izuku got undressed, then helped Izuku do the same. They both got in the tub and sat at opposite ends since it was big enough. Izuku began washing Izuku's hair as he made some of the bubbles float. What do you think so far? Izuku asked. I like. Izuku answered. I'm glad. Izuku smiled. Why sad? Izuku said, startling him. Izuku backed away to see Izuku staring right at him. What? Izuku said, confused. It's just me. You can cry now, Izuku told him. Izuku looked away and bit his lip. He knew this was coming. Izuku could always tell how he felt. Even with the way he is now, that one thing has never changed. Izuku's eyes watered and he bit his lip harder, drawing blood. He hated crying. It reminded him of how weak and helpless he used to be. With everything going on lately and Izuku almost dying, he couldn't hold it in anymore. He wanted to remain strong and focused on Izuku instead of himself. He heard the water quietly splashing, and soon Izuku grabbed his face. Izuku turned to Izuku as tears ran down his face. Izuku placed their foreheads together and Izuku closed his eyes, letting out a small choked sob. Izuku wrapped his arms around Izuku's neck, crying harder. Izuku gently rubbed Izuku's back as he felt a pain in his chest. Both boys made their way to the kitchen where Aizawa was waiting. He already had their plates at the table and was eating. Izuku sat down and started eating. Both of them paused and looked at Izuku, who was still standing. What's wrong, Izuku? Aren't you going to eat? Aizawa asked. For me? Izuku asked, confused. Of course it is, Aizawa said, also confused. Izuku sat down and began eating. Sorry, he isn't used to anyone other than me cooking for him, Izuku said with a small frown. I'm going to change all of that. You both deserve a proper home, Aizawa told them. Thank you. After dinner, Izuku insisted on washing the dishes alone. He knew both of them were exhausted and made them get in the bed. When Izuku was done, he turned off all the lights and made sure the doors were locked. He then made his way to their room and closed the door. Izuku peered at him through the dark. Izuku turned on the lamp and climbed into the bed carefully beside him. What are you still doing up? Izuku asked. Waiting. Oh, sorry, I made you wait so long, Izuku apologized. Don't mind. Izuku scooted closer and hugged Izuku, now laying on his shoulder. Hey Aizu, why do you protect me? Izuku couldn't help but ask. Love you. Izuku couldn't help the small smile that spread across his face. Hearing Izuku say that he loved him made him happy. He could feel himself wanting to cry but pushed the tears away. I love you too, Izuku said, feeling Izuku scoot closer again. After a moment, Izuku asked another question. How about Aizawa? It's not like you to accept someone, let alone a hero. Papa. Izuku froze and looked down at him. What? He feels like Papa. When I'm around him, my chest feels warm. Just like with you, Kaken, and Shochan. I like that feeling, Izuku said, yawning. Izuki hummed in response, I get it. Let's get some sleep, okay? Okay, Izuku. Today Aizawa was taking us to get a few things. Izuki tried to deny the gifts, but it fell on deaf ears. Even Shochan and Kaken came with us. Shochan wanted to hold my hand, but Kaken said that he was going to hold my hand. I got tired of them fighting, so I held both of their hands. Izuki and Aizawa chuckled, but I don't know why. We walked into a big store that had a bunch of little stores. I think Aizawa called it a mall. Let's get you some clothes first, Aizawa said, heading to a store. After some coaching, Izuki finally started to pick some things out. Deku, what do you think of this? Kaken held up a shirt. It was red with the word die in big, bold, orange letters. Okay, hell no. Izuki took the shirt from him. What's wrong with it? Kaken asked. You're not dressing my brother in that shit. Izuki glared. He can dress however he wants, and he said he liked it, so shut up. Kaken took it back. Do you want me to kick your ass? Izuki growled. Oh, so you think you can beat me now? Kaken challenged. Shochan walked away, and I followed, still holding his hand. He started to look at the shirts, then turned to me. What colors do you like? Shochan asked. I let go of his hand to sign. Navy blue, red, black, white, and gray. Shochan nodded. Do you care what's on it? No. Shochan started to grab multiple shirts in the colors I said and showed them to me. He held all the ones I liked, which were mostly black, in one hand and grabbed my hand with the other. Next, we went over to the pants section. I didn't have a preference, so he just grabbed a bunch of my size in different styles and colors. I held those, and we went to find Aizawa. He took the clothes from us and paid for them. Shochan said he was okay holding the bag, so I let him. We walked back over to Kaken and Izuki to see them still fighting. Did you find any clothes? Shochan asked. No, I need to help Izuku first, Izuki stopped to say. I already did that, Shochan said, holding up the bag. Oh, okay then. Cat, come help me pick out clothes. Izuki walked off. Oh, so now you want my help? Kaken groaned, following him. Shochan and I walked over to the small fish pond. As we waited, I made a small ring of water float and he froze it. I then lowered it and we watched as some of the fish jumped through it. A few people stopped and watched, clapping. Some small children came over asking us to do more tricks, so we did. The crowd got a little too big and caught the attention of a security guard. Excuse me. We turned to her. I'm sorry, but you can't play with the pond. I apologize. Well, stop, Shochan told her. Thank you for understanding. The kids awed and the adults clapped before continuing on their way. Aizawa and the others soon came over to us as the crowd left. What was that about? Are you two okay? Aizawa asked. Fish. We used our quirks on the pond to play with the fish, and a crowd formed. A security guard asked us to stop, and everyone left. Shochan explained. You can't just mess with things, you idiots. This is a store, Bakugo sighed. I didn't know. This is my first time here, Shochan said, and I nodded, agreeing. It's okay. Come on, let's go get shoes, Izuki said. We stood up and Kaken grabbed my other hand. This time, I let Kaken pick my shoes since he was upset about the clothes. He got me 3 pairs and I thanked him. Once done, we had got a few more things we needed and then got food. I liked the sweet stuff and Aizawa promised to get me more. We went to a few more places before dropping Shochan and Kaken off. We then went home and I sat in the living room trying on my new shoes. Hey Izuka, do you want me to throw out these old ones? Aizawa asked. I looked up to see Aizawa holding my old red sneakers. I quickly stood up and made my way over. I rapidly shook my head and grabbed them, sitting them back down. No, Izuki got me these. I signed. Aizawa nodded and smiled. Oh, I see. Present Mike brought your uniforms over while we were gone. Why don't you make sure it fits good? Okay. I grabbed all my new things and carried them to the room. Izuki was already in there putting up his things. Did they all fit well? Izuki asked. Yes. I laid my things on the bed and helped Izuki put them away. He thanked me, and soon we were done. I walked over to the bed to see the only thing left was our uniforms. I picked mine up and started to undress. I looked at Izuki to see he was straightening up the room. Try, I asked. Oh, I tried it on when I first came in here, Izuki told me. He walked over and grabbed it, hanging it in the closet. I finished undressing and tried it on. I didn't mind how it fit and turned to Izuki. He looked over it and nodded with a smile. It looks good on you. Izuki gave me a thumbs up. I took them back off and hung them up. I then went to the dresser and grabbed a large shirt. I slipped it on over my boxers while Izuki put on sweats, but remained shirtless. The two of us headed to the living room and sat down. Izuki started to flip through the channels, and I laid my head in Izuki's lap. Izuki settled on an action movie and started running his hands through my hair. I made a weird sound liking the sensation, and Izuka chuckled. You're like a cat, Izuki commented. Sunmei and Yuki hopped on the couch and curled up near my feet. I watched the movie as Izuki continued to play in my hair. He suddenly stopped, and I whined looking up at him. He clipped his hair back so it was no longer in his eyes and smiled down at me. He started massaging my scalp again, and I turned back to the TV. Aizawa entered the living room. The food's done. We got up and headed to the table. I just listened as the two spoke. How did your uniforms fit? Aizawa asked. They fit us good. Izuki responded. That's good. Tomorrow's the first day. Are you excited? Aizawa asked. Just a bit. I think it could be a good experience for Izuki commented. No care, I said, and they laughed. Yeah, I expected that. Nisa decided to have all first years learn sign language. I think that'll make communicating a lot easier for you. Aizawa said. During missions, it'll be hard to talk. I signed. Yes, that is true. Aizawa said, now in deep thought. We should tell Principal Nizu about your mask. We can talk to Power Loader too. He may be able to make it. Izuki suggested. Mask? Aizawa said, confused. I can transfer my thought waves to people and objects to speak to them without physically speaking. I don't know how to scale it down, so if I used it, everyone in a 100-foot radius would hear it too. I sketched out a mask that could theoretically work in the same way. I want to be able to project my voice so that everyone can understand me. Shochan helped me come up with the schismatics, but the formula is missing something. I started to mumble and sign without realizing it. Aizu, I looked up. Yes, you're signing too fast, Izuki smiled. Sorry. It's fine, I caught all of that. Aizawa chuckled. What? But how? Izuki said in disbelief. A part of being a hero is having good eyes. You need to be able to detect and pick up anything. Aizawa told him. Good to know. Izuki mumbled, keeping a mental note. Anyways, let's hurry and get to bed. I can't be late again this year. Nizu is threatening to dock my pay. Aizawa's sweat dropped. Cruel. Okay, Izuku. I opened my eyes to see Izuki shaking me awake. I felt exhausted and whined as he shook me again. I must have used my quirk in my sleep again. It was the monsters in my dream. They made me do it again. Izuki frowned. Monsters? I nodded, small tears in my eyes from the slight headache. He gave me a little smile and picked me up. I'm glad you're small. If you were as big or even bigger than me, things would be hard. Izuki said more to himself. He took me to the bathroom and sat me on the sink. He started to wash my face and brush my teeth. I tried my best to keep from falling over, but it was hard. Next, he stood directly in front of me to do my hair. After that, he picked me up again and took me to the bed. He removed my large shirt and put it in the hamper. I did my best to help him as he dressed me. My pants were the hardest part, but being used to this, Izuki managed without issue. I rested my head against him as he tied my tie. Once done, I laid down as he himself got ready. I followed the patterns of our comforter as I waited. Once done, he came over and gently picked me up. Now having a little strength, I wrapped my legs around him and buried my face in his neck. He grabbed both our bags and headed to the kitchen. There Aizawa was waiting for us, having made breakfast. Izuku, are you all right? Aizawa asked. He'll be okay as he rests throughout the day. Izuki said, sitting me in a chair. Try and eat something. It'll help you regain your strength. I sluggishly nodded and started to slowly eat. What happened? Aizawa asked worriedly. Sometimes he'll have nightmares and start using his quirk in his panicked state. Since he can't hold back, he repeatedly releases it all at once and ends up completely exhausted when he wakes up. It's my own fault. I woke up and couldn't fall back asleep, so I went to the living room to read. Sleeping with me close by helps him relax, so I guess he felt my presence leave him and got scared. I'm used to this now, so don't worry about it. Izuki explained. Can I help? Aizawa asked. No, I managed to say. Don't take that personally, he didn't mean it in a bad way. He doesn't trust anyone other than me and Kat when he's like this. He has some bad memories of our mom taking advantage of his state to hurt him. We learned a lot this past summer, Izuki sighed. It's okay, I understand. I'll let the others know, so if you or Izuka need anything during class, let us know. Aizawa smiled. Sure thing. Izuki quickly ate a piece of toast. Aizu, you ready? I slowly nodded, and he came over with my shoes. He put them on my feet and laced them up. He then put on his own shoes and picked me up. We got in Aizawa's car, and I laid in Izuki's lap taking a small nap. He shook me awake, and I sat up a bit confused. I just wanted to sleep. He got out of the car, then helped me out. I whined, and he chuckled, picking me up again. Aizawa had to go to the lounge, but luckily we knew where the class was. Some red-haired boy noticed us and held the door. Thank you, Izuki said, walking in. Sure, no problem, he chuckled nervously. Kaken was arguing with the robot boy when he noticed us and got up, ignoring the boy. I reached for him, and he took me from Izuki. He also had no trouble holding me as I clung to him. Monsters? He softly asked. I nodded, and he rubbed my ear as I laid my head on his shoulder. The robot boy also had a stroke as he watched us. But surely you know that isn't okay conduct for class? He stresses loudly, his glasses slightly crooked. I thought I warned you about minding your own damn business. Izuki growled, annoyed. I lightly flicked my hand, and he slightly flew back, landing in a chair. He looked completely disheveled, while some students laughed. Others watched, confused by the situation. Don't use your quirk, Aiza. You need to focus on resting. Kaken said gently. I nodded again and looked up, seeing Sho-chan enter the room. He saw us and walked over to us. He gently lifted my hair to feel my forehead. You're a bit hot and starting to sweat. Is your quirk exhausted? He asked. I nodded and he frosted his hand, making me whine contently. He bent down and pecked my lips with a smile. I pressed my forehead against his hand to show I liked it. Izuki glared at the nosy students, making them go back to what they were doing. You're too close, icy hot, Kaken growled. Too bad. Kaken glared at him. You're lucky I can't blast your ass right now. If you kiss me, I will move, Sho-chan said, making Kaken turn red. Iwa, do you want to fucking die? Kaken yelled, embarrassed. Izuku gets one, why can't I? Don't you love me? Sho-chan said quietly. I struggled a bit, but managed to touch his cheek. No, sad. Kaken groaned, now feeling bad, and looked away. Fucking fine, just stop making that face. I'll do it later, just not here. Kaken mumbled, looking away. Sho-chan's eyes lit up. Okay. You three are so cute. My poor single heart can't take it. Izuki teased, earning a kick from Kaken. Sleep. I spoke up. Kaken nodded and went to a seat up front. He sat down and moved me around so that I was in his lap. I laid my head against his chest. Sho-chan and Izuki sat in the two seats beside up. I just listened to them as they talked. I felt Aizawa enter, but no one noticed. I tapped Kaken's arm and they all followed my eyes. Seeing him, they grew quiet and waited for him to speak. All of you be quiet, you aren't here to make friends. He spoke up. Hi, I said, making Kaken and the others chuckle. Hi, Izuku. Are you feeling better? Aizawa asked. Tiny, I said, and he nodded. My name is Shota Aizawa, also known as Eraserhead. I am your homeroom teacher. It took you all too long to quiet down. Today there is supposed to be an assembly, but we aren't going. Aizawa spoke up. But why not, sir? Isn't it mandatory? A pink girl asked. Here us teachers are allowed to teach as we see fit. I find the assembly unnecessary, so we will not be attending. Aizawa answered. Then what are we doing, sir? A girl with a large ponytail asked. We'll be going outside to do an apprehension test. I need to see where you are now and what you need to improve. In your assigned changing room lockers, you will see your gym uniforms. Put them on and meet me in the fields. You five stay here for a minute. Aizawa instructed. Everyone else got up and left, and Aizawa came over. He touched my forehead and frowned. You're burning up. I want you to go lay in Nizu's office until we're done. He said that it was okay, so don't worry. Who is going with you? Aizawa asked. I can go to keep him cool. Is that okay with you? Sho-chan asked. I nodded and reached for him. He stood and carefully grabbed me from Kaken. I rested my head in his cool side, and he held me securely. Okay, I'll have you two do the test later if you're up to it. If not, then tomorrow, Aizawa said. Okay, Sho-chan nodded. We went our separate ways and I closed my eyes. Sho-chan smelled really nice and I liked it. He stopped and I opened my eyes to see us enter the office. He closed the door and walked over to the couch. He tried to lay me down, but I refused to let him go. He decided to lay down with me on top of him. I snuggled up to his cool side and yawned, closing my eyes. I felt him leave a soft kiss on my forehead. Get some sleep, he told me. Okay, no one. Izuku laid in his bed, breathing a bit heavy. He had his worst nightmare yet and could barely even blink. Izuki desperately wanted to stay home with Izuku. Inko told him that she'd take care of him and to go ahead. Izuki was a bit hesitant, but Inko was his mother and he trusted her. She and Izuku may not get along, but she was still his mom and wouldn't hurt him. Children were way too trusting. Izuku managed to open his eyes, partially hearing his door open. Izuku, I brought you some soup, Inko said, walking over with a tray. Izuku could only watch as she came over. He couldn't speak. Only watch. You ungrateful brat. I do something nice for you, and you can't even say thank you. Inko yelled angrily. Izuku still couldn't do a thing. Fine then. TW//child abuse. Inko forced Izuku's mouth open and poured the boiling hot soup down his throat. Izuku's eyes started to water due to the excruciating pain he felt. He didn't understand why his mother was hurting him. The only one who loves him is Izuki. That's his only family. Izuku, not being able to swallow, began to choke and drown in the liquid. Inko turned him over and roughly patted his back. Great, now I have to clean this up, she yelled, annoyed. Izuku was so scared and panicked that he accidentally wet himself. Inko noticed, and her eyes filled with anger and disgust. She roughly dragged him off the bed by his hair and started to kick him. "You filthy, disgusting, useless child. How dare a rat like you make so much work for me?" She yelled between each kick. All Izuku could do was cry as he was unable to defend himself. Inko snatched the covers off the bed and stomped out of the room. Izuku started to heal himself while she wasn't looking, but it was too late. The damage done to his throat was severe. Maybe if he healed it immediately after, he'd be fine, but he waited too long. He stopped just as Inko entered his room once again. "You need to be punished," she mumbled, dragging him down the stairs by his hair. She opened the basement door and tossed him down the stairs. Izuku just laid there in pain as she walked down toward him. She picked him up and started to tie his wrist so that he was hanging from the roof. Izuku was absolutely terrified and started to cry more. Inko walked away before coming back with an electrical cord. "Since you decided to wet yourself, I'm going to punish you. Every time you have an accident, this is going to happen," Inko said darkly. Inko pulled down Izuku's shorts and the boy was petrified. She started to whip Izuku in his genital area. The boy could only scream internally. Blood started to drip onto the floor and Inko began smiling. Izuku could feel his motor functions coming back, but was in too much pain to move. "Hurting you is making me feel a whole lot better. I should have done this ages ago. Who cares if you're 4? I wonder if beating Izuku will have the same effect." Inko pondered. Izuku started to shake his head. "I take," Izuku pleaded. "What the hell are you saying?" Inko growled, now annoyed. "I take," Izuku said again. "Speak properly." She yelled at him. "CC can't." Izuku started to bleed from the mouth, having strained his throat. Inko chuckled. "Guess I fucked you up pretty bad, huh? At least I won't have to hear your annoying voice anymore. What are you trying to say? Come on, spit it out. I'm losing patience." "Take what?" she asked. "Peep-on punishment," Izuku managed to say. "Oh, so you want me to only hurt you instead of Izuki? Is that correct?" Inko asked. Izuku simply nodded and she grinned scarily wide. "I have to protect Izuki. I promise, Dad." "All right, then let's get this started," Inko yelled. She excitedly ran upstairs to find more things she can hurt him with. Izuku took this time to heal himself as best he could. He only focused on the life-threatening injuries, leaving him once again exhausted. Inko came down with a big bag in hand and smiled. She took out some copper wire and twisted 2 of them together. She then turned around and started to whip Izuku's arms and legs. He couldn't even cry out as his throat hurt too much. This was only the beginning of his torture. Izuki had after-school classes and got home later than expected. He immediately rushed to Izuku's room after telling his mother a quick hello. She simply smiled as he disappeared up the stairs. Izuki opened Izuku's room, but didn't see him anywhere. Izuku's room was spotless, but where was the boy? Izuki was about to leave when he heard a small whine. He fully entered the room and turned to see Izuku trembling in a corner. Izuki rushed over now in big brother mode. "Izuku? What happened? Are you okay?" Izuki asked immediately. Izuku barely managed to slide a notebook over to Izuki as his hand violently shook. Izuki picked it up to see "Never leave me again" in large sloppy letters. "PP please," Izuku begged in tears. "Aizawa, what happened?" Izuki asked, hugging him tightly. "Monster. MMO monster," was all Izuku said. Izuku Midoriya would never be the same. No one. Izuku laid on top of Shoto, who had fallen asleep. Izuku gently ran his thumb over the boy's burned scar. Izuku was admiring Shoto's looks. To him, Shoto was beautiful, like the princesses in the stories his dad used to read to him. Shoto slowly opened his eyes, now awake. He noticed how Izuku stared at him. "What is it?" Shoto asked. "Pretty," Izuku said quietly. "You're very pretty too," Shoto smiled. Izuku gently put their lips together. He didn't know what to do after that, though. Shoto gently brushed Izuku's hair from his face and kissed back. Izuku followed Shoto's lead as the boy deepened the kiss. Shoto remembered seeing Natsuo kiss his girlfriend and copied them. He slipped his tongue into Izuku's mouth as he sat up. Izuku did the same and whined, feeling his body heat up. The two pulled away, now slightly panting. "Like," Izuku said with a barely noticeable smile. "Me too," Shoto said with a small smile. Izuku managed to push himself up so that he was straddling Shoto. "Are you feeling better?" Shoto asked. Izuku nodded and Shoto heard him whine again. "What's wrong?" Shoto asked. Izuku answered. "You need to use the bathroom? Do you need help?" Shoto asked. Izuku nodded and Shoto picked him up. He carried Izuku to the bathroom and placed him down. Izuku wobbled and Shoto caught him, seeing he still couldn't move his legs. "I'm gonna have to help you. Is that okay?" Shoto asked. "Yes." Izuku didn't mind anyone seeing his injuries. Only Izuki. That's the only person he'll never allow to look at them. Shoto helped Izuku remove his pants and boxers. He then held Izuku from behind and looked away. Hearing nothing, Shoto looked back confused. "What's wrong?" Shoto asked. Can't pee. Why not? Sit. Izuku pointed to the toilet. It was engraved in Izuku's mind to pee sitting down. It was the best way to prevent an accident. If one drop is found, he'll get whipped again. Shoto just turned Izuku around and sat him on the toilet. Shoto accidentally looked and his eyes widened in horror as he saw Izuku's injuries. It should not look like that. Shoto just looked away and remained quiet. He didn't want to upset Izuku or make him experience anything again. So he just remained quiet and waited. Done. Shoto helped Izuku and they headed back to the couch. The two of them laid down and Shoto started to read as Izuku took a nap. Izuki and Bakugo entered the office to see the two of them asleep. Izuki gently shook them awake and Izuku whined, rubbing his eyes. Come on, Aizawa, it's time for lunch. Izuki shook him some more. Izuku turned, seeing it was Izuki, and desperately reached for him as he whined. Izuki picked the boy up, who tightly clung to him. Izuki just chuckled and hugged him. I missed you too. Shoto, now sitting up, pulled Bakugo down, making the boy stumble and fall on top of him. Bakugo turned bright red. Shoto grabbed Bakugo's face and pulled him into a kiss. Bakugo soon started to kiss back, and it grew heated. I do not need to see this, Izuki deadpanned. The two pulled away, and Bakugo panted heavily. His face was flushed, his eyes were hooded and filled with tears. Shoto wiped them away and frowned, feeling guilty. I'm sorry, I d-dash. Bakugo pulled Shoto into another kiss before he looked away, covering his face. Tell anyone, and you're dead. Bakugo threatened. Okay, I won't. He's so adorable when he's flustered. Izuki teased, earning a punch to the leg. Eat. Izuku mumbled into Izuki's neck. Oh right, let's go already, Izuki said, leaving the room. The other two followed behind them quietly. Shoto occasionally tried to hold Bakugo's hand, only for Bakugo to smack his hand away. No mean, Izuku told him. I'm not being mean, Bakugo defended. Yes you are. See, I'm crying now, Shoto said. What? No you aren't. Stop trying to get me in trouble. Bakugo narrowed his eyes. You just can't see the tears, Shoto said as he avoided a kick from Bakugo. You're so annoying. Bakugo rolled his eyes. They entered the cafeteria and went to the lunch line. Shoto got a second tray for Izuki, while Bakugo got one for Izuku. Izuki had beef yakisoba while Izuku had katsudon, their favorite foods. They sat at the end of their class's lunch table. Izuki sat Izuku in the seat beside him so that they could eat. How was the apprehension test? Shoto asked. Pretty easy. You two won't have any difficulties, Izuki told him. What were your ranks? Shoto asked. First, Izuki answered. Second, Bakugo grumbled, making Izuki chuckle. I hope we get top scores as well. Shoto opened his drink. Of course you will. We're the fucking strongest here. These extras don't stand a chance. Bakugo grinned. You know you're very cocky for someone who couldn't even take first place. You won't last long here. Uraraka spoke up. The fuck you say? Bakugo growled. You have a lot to say for someone who didn't even make it to the top 5. How are you feeling down there in 10th place? Izuki side-eyed her. You're just as bad as him, except you have some weird little brother fetish. Ojiro butted in, coming to her defense. Several people started to laugh, including Uraraka. Izuki and the others stood up to throw out their food. Broke people should never laugh, Shoto said as he walked past her, and she gasped. Izuki picked Izuku up, and he lifted his finger, making her flip phone fall in her miso soup. She shrieked and immediately grabbed it, hoping it still worked. Not the flip phone. Mina yelled out, dying laughing. A few others joined in. Maybe if you ask Ponytail nicely, she'll make you another one. Bakugo laughed. Izuki and Izuku walked past her, and Izuku leaned over so he was by her ear. Bitch, Izuki smirked, and the group left. As they got further away, Uraraka angrily stood up and Izuku tripped her. The cafeteria laughed, and she ran out, pissed off. Lunch soon ended, and Izuku was finally okay after visiting Chiyo. They got to class just as lunch ended and took their seats. Soon the class arrived along with Aizawa. Uraraka eyed the group angrily, and they just continued to be unbothered. Aizawa noticed the tension and shook his head. It was only day 1, but he expected this. Those 4 were the rudest and unfriendliest people he's ever met. They hate everyone they meet. He couldn't even comprehend how they got along so well. Izuku, did something happen during lunch? Aizawa asked. I pointed at Uraraka. Bitch. Uraraka gasped and clenched her fist angrily. What? Aizawa sighed. Izuku, I told you to stop calling people that. Sorry, it's all right. Anyways, All Might will be instructing your next hero lesson. Aizawa yawned. Are you just going to let him get away with that? Uraraka yelled. Aizawa ignored her. He knew that despite our personalities, we never started anything. We only retaliated when targeted or disrespected. The door to the classroom was thrown open. I am entering the room like a normal person. It's All Might. Yagi, I said. Hello, Izuku. Izuki, Yagi said nervously. Whatever. Izuki grumbled. He was still mad from lunch. Today's exercise will take place at ground beta. Your hero suits have been delivered to your lockers. Please get changed and meet us in the designated training field. Yagi instructed. The class started to leave, and I grabbed Izuki's hand. Our small group trailed behind the class as we talked. How do you think our suits came out? Shochan asked. I just hope they used the right materials. Wearing a suit would be useless if it just burns every time I put it on. I've ruined enough clothes, Izuki sighed. The same goes with me. I hope the material can keep up with the temperature changes in my body, Shochan said in deep thought. I added a bunch of support gear, but I didn't think about how heavy it could be. I did a lot of weight training, so hopefully it won't weigh me down too much. Kaken shrugged. I hope they didn't forget any of Izuku's support gear. They're important, and we'll be in trouble without them. Izuki mumbled the last part. That's true. Without them, he could hurt someone or himself, Kaken said, ruffling my hair. We got to the locker rooms and went to our lockers. We grabbed the cases containing our suits and began changing. Shochan stopped me and pushed me into a changing stall. I'll help Izuka change since my costume doesn't have as much gear, Shochan told them. All right. Thanks, Izuki said while Kaken nodded. Shochan closed the door, and I tilted my head confused. He noticed my expression and gave me a soft smile. You don't want them to see those injuries, right? I'll help you keep them from him. I have some I'd like to keep hidden as well. Just promise you'll tell me what happened when you're ready. Shochan patted my head. I nodded and hugged him. After that, we began getting dressed, and I looked at the various marks that littered his flesh. Once he got done, he helped me finish getting dressed. Shoshan's costume consisted of a blue jumpsuit with the upper left side missing. In its place was a padded, black, fire-resistant sleeveless top. Paired with it were beige thermal gloves, a beige utility belt, and white high boots. My suit was a green jumpsuit with black accents. It had a beige chest plate attached to it for protection. On my arms were white high-definition gloves that could double as armor. I had a red utility belt with medical supplies, though I doubt I'll need it. I had black gravity boots that stopped at my thighs. Lastly was my mask. It came in the form of 2 earpieces. With the touch of a button, they change and connect, making the mask. They had built-in Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, microphone, and calling capabilities. It also allowed me to direct my telepathic voice at a specific person or group. It may look like I have a lot of extra items, but they're necessary. Every single piece of gear also weakens my quirk in order to help me hold back. I like your suit as well, Shochan smiled. We left the changing room to see Izuki and Kaken also fully dressed. Damn, Kaken mumbled. They came out good, Izuki commented. We like your costumes too. They suit you. Shochan complimented. Izuki's suit design changed a lot before he eventually settled on a suit that was a mixture of me and Kaken's. He didn't want it to look too similar, so he changed and added a few things. He had baggy black bottoms with green thigh garters. He had a green belt with a red talisman similar to the one I gave him. He had black high boots similar to Shokin's. He had a skin-tight sleeveless shirt. It was black with white in the center and yellow bordering it. He also had green straps wrapped around his arms and torso. He also had forearm bracers like Kaken's, but black, green, and white. Kind of like Bakugo's suit, but with Izuku's colors. All right, let's hurry up. Everyone else is gone. Izuki yawned. Okay, Izuku. I wasn't really paying attention to what Yagi was saying. They're gonna tell me what they need me to do anyways. As they all talked and discussed random things, I entertained myself by moving Izuki's fingers with my quirk. He glanced down at me and smiled softly before turning back. I just squeezed his arm tighter to show affection. Izuku, Todoroki, are you ready? Aizawa asked. Yes, Shochan answered. I looked between the two, now confused. Aizawa must have noticed my confusion because he smiled. It's all right, Aizu. I'll tell you again. Aizawa told me. I nodded. You and Todoroki will do your quirk apprehension test now. Everyone else will start their battle trials. You'll join them once done. Aizawa explained. I nodded to show my understanding. Izuki let go of my hand, and I let out a small whine. He just smiled at me. He patted my head and kissed my forehead, making me calm down. I'm not going to be far away. I promise, he tried to reassure me. Okay. I frowned. He left with Kaken and the rest of the class. I noticed Ojiro give Izuki a disgusted look and narrowed my eyes at him. When no one was looking, I turned his tail inside out before reverting it and healing him. I did it so quickly that he only noticed the immense pain 10 seconds after it was already over. He screamed and dropped to his knees holding his tail. Everyone rushed to him to see if he was all right. I stayed where I was and noticed Izuki staring directly at me. I tilted my head, and he tapped his bottom lip. I brought my hand up and touched my mouth. Sure enough, I was grinning. My face immediately fell, and he nodded, turning back. Did Izuki know I did something? No, he didn't see anything. He can't see anything. I'm not a monster. Izuki can't see me being bad. Then he'll hate me. I don't want him to hate me. Everyone finally got back on track and Sho-chan stood beside me. Finally, Aizawa began to instruct us. First up is the 50-meter dash. Get to the starting line, Aizawa said. We walked over to the line and Sho-chan got in a ready position. I figured it was a race and got ready too. We heard a small sound indicating that we can go. Sho-chan takes off using his ice quirk to skate down his lane. I just teleport to the opposite side of the finish line. Izuku, 0.05 seconds. Aizawa said in Todoroki your time is 3.17 seconds. You're such a cheater. Sho-chan ruffled my hair. I poked his side. I nod. Okay, so next I'm going to test your grip strength. You'll grip this device and it'll read the force of your grip. Aizawa said holding up a device. Sho-chan took it first and gripped it as hard as he could. He held it for Aizawa-sensei to read before letting go with a sigh. 83.2 kilograms, Aizawa said aloud. That hurt a bit. Be careful, Sho-chan said holding it out for me. I lifted my hand, and a telekinetic exoskeleton covered it. I grabbed the device and squeezed. Without much effort, it was crushed and could no longer be used. Sorry, I apologized. It's all right. Let's just say you got very high score. Aizawa scratched his forehead. Here, I held it out for him. He took it with a small chuckle. Thanks. The rest is unnecessary, so I'll just put their scores kissing face. Standing long jump. Izuku cleared sandbox. Shoto cleared sandbox. Repeated sidesteps. Izuku 612. Shoto 102. Ball throw. Izuku infinity. Shoto 461.3 meters. Distance run. Izuku 1.8 seconds. Shoto 5 minutes. Seated toe touch. Izuku passed. Shoto passed. Sit-ups. Izuku 68. Hasn't fully recovered physically. Shoto 102. New ranks. 1 SD Izuku. 2 ND Izuki. 3 RD Shoto. For TH Katsuki. Everyone else, we were now done and could go join the class. Getting to the viewing area, I saw that Izuki was currently fighting the glasses guy. He managed to get a kick in, cutting Izuki's cheek and sending him back a few inches. The bitch on Izuki's team seemed to find this amusing and I growled. The room started to tremble as my anger increased. Kaken immediately grabbed me and pulled me into a hug. I calmed down, but barely. How could I be calm when they're hurting him? I was growling lowly as the class took a few steps back. The room was still trembling slightly, and they kept shooting me worried looks. Izuku tried to calm down. Your eyes are flickering a lot, Sho-chan said softly. Fun fact. When trying to contain their anger, the twins' eyes flicker from their natural color to white for Izuku and red for Izuki. I glance at the monitor to see Izuki's face change from bored to serious. He suddenly places his hands on the ground. They heat up and melt the ground beneath him. He then holds up his hands and shoots fire in random directions. Both glasses and bitch jump away in surprise and try to cover their faces. The smoke clears and we can see that Izuki jumped down the hole. Glasses tries to follow, but fire golems that Izuki had hidden appear and attack him. Bitch finally decided to be useful and help the golems fight Glasses. The camera switched to Izuki, who was burning through the wall to his left. The frog girl looked startled and got into a fighting position. Izuki just raised his hand, shooting flames her way. She was blasted into the wall and struggled to get back up. Izuki walked over to the missile-like thing and touched it. A buzzer went off indicating that the battle was over. Izuki wasted no time and ran out of the building. The room was still shaking, so Kaken wouldn't let me go. Deku, you need to calm down, Kaken told me. No, I growled. The door opened and Izuki entered the room slightly out of breath. Kaken finally let me go, and I ran to him. He pulled me into a hug and sighed in relief. I hugged him tightly, my eyes watering. You had me worried, Aizawa. What happened? Izuki asked. Hurt, I said, touching his face and healing the cut. Izuki just cracked a small smile. It's going to take more than that to hurt me. So you don't have to get so worked up. He ruffled my hair. I just pressed my face against his chest and hugged him tighter. I felt him shake his head before hugging me back. Glasses entered the room, and I tightened my grip on Izuki. Kill, I mumbled into his chest. No, Izuku, Izuki said sternly. Fine. My finger twitched and Glasses tripped, face planting. There were a few sneakers, including Kaken. Bitch walked in, helping a bandaged Tsu to a chair. Sorry about that. I may have gone a little overboard. Izuki apologized. It's all right, Karo. All right. I'm tired, so get the last match over with. Aizawa yawned. Right? Izuki, good work, but I'll have to take off points. You didn't work with or rely on your partner. You also caused extensive damage to the building. Yagi said, making Izuki roll his eyes. Yagi then went on about everyone else's scores and where they went wrong. I didn't care, so I didn't listen. All right, Lastly, Todoroki and Kirishima will be the villains and Izuku will be the hero, Yagi told us. All right, let's do this, Todoroki, Kirishima said excitedly. Shochan just sighed and headed for the door. Kirishima just jogged after him, happily chatting away. I growled angrily as Izuki pushed me towards the door. Come on, Aizu. Just finish it quickly, and then we won't have to worry for the rest of the day, Izuki told me. I just clicked my tongue in annoyance and left the room. I knocked things over with my quirk as I left to show my irritation. No one. Izuki sighed as Izuku left and scratched his head nervously. Bakugo walked up beside him and shook his head with a snort. Well, this isn't gonna end well. Bakugo smirked. He loved chaos. Shut up. Shoto will be there, so it won't be bad. Izuki rolled his eyes. Yeah, but what do you think will happen after the match? You know how nasty his temper can get. Bakugo's grin widened. I don't like the look on that one. What are you two talking about? Aizawa eyed them as he stood beside Izuki. Izuku's gonna throw a temper tantrum. Bakugo laughed. Izuku? A temper tantrum? I find that hard to believe. Why would he do that? Aizawa raised an eyebrow. Well, you do play a small part, Izuki chuckled. And how is that? Well, first you separated us for the Quirk apprehension test. Then Ida cut my cheek. Next, Yagi put Izuki against Shoto, which I said wasn't a good idea. And lastly, we were separated again. I mean, he was already annoyed from lunch, so this just made his bad mood worse. Izuki shrugged. Should we be worried? Aizawa asked, a bit nervous. He won't hurt anyone. Izuki reassured. Well, that's good. Aizawa sighed. But it might take a while for you to fix the damage, Izuki grinned. Aizawa just gave him a tired look and pulled out his phone to call Nizu. Seriously, I need to get paid more. Aizawa groaned. Izuku slowly entered the building as the battle began. Izuku began rapidly clicking his tongue as barely visible ripples shot through the air. What is he doing? Aizawa asked. Echolocation, Izuki answered. Wait, he can do that? Aizawa said in shock. Yeah, we don't know either. Izuki shrugged. When we asked, he just said searching the other way took too long, so his friend taught him. Bakugo explained. What friend taught him echolocation? Apparently a bat, Izuki snorted. A bat? Aizawa deadpanned. Yeah, I don't know what's up with his weird relationship with animals. He used to sneak into zoos and pet shops a lot when we were younger. Bakugo shrugged. The more I learn about you two, the more questions I have. Aizawa shook his head. Izuku took one step forward and vanished from the camera's view. He appeared on the second camera, catching Kirishima off guard. Shoto, who had expected this, immediately shot his flames towards Izuku. Izuku raised his hand and an invisible shield blocked the flames. Shoto and Kirishima suddenly got slammed against the wall, Kirishima harder than Shoto, by an invisible force. Unable to move, they could only struggle as Izuku touched the missile-like object. The buzzer went off, ending the match, and Izuku released his hold on them. Shoto immediately got to his feet, jogging towards the exit. You should run, Shoto warned as the ground shook. Kirishima just nodded and the two sprinted away. Izuku was pissed. He was angry about the earlier events, but what he was the angriest about was Shoto. Izuku didn't like the fact that he had to attack Shoto. He hated himself for potentially harming him. Izuku was going to explode, literally. Pent-up anger isn't good for anyone, but for Izuku, someone who can't process emotion, it was deadly. As soon as Izuku could no longer feel anyone's presence, he released everything. Izuku's eyes turned white as he was surrounded in bright light. How to explain what happened so here, Skull? This, but on a smaller scale. Izuku stood in the center of the crater he left. All structures in the blast range were basically vaporized. Izuku swayed slightly and slowly fell back. Before he hit the ground, he was stopped by a chest. Izuki gently held him with a small smile. Izuki, I got you, Izuki said softly. Why are you bringing this up now? Someone yelled. I just feel like we handled things the wrong way. A second voice said quietly. We. You mean you? It was your idea. You don't get to have regrets. The first voice yelled. But nothing. This is on you. I told you there was another way, but you didn't listen. Mother knows best, right? The man chuckled darkly. You don't know shit, and now I'm stuck with you. Did you even consider the possibility of them finding out? He snapped. They won't find out. They're only children. The woman scowled. You better pray that they don't, because if they do. The man once again chuckled darkly. For both your sake and mine's, I hope the cancer takes you out first. The man gave her a disgusted look. What happened to you? I thought you loved me. The woman said in disbelief. How could I ever love you after what you made me do? The man's voice wavered as the unpleasant memories filled his mind. We serve the commission. Our loyalty to them is more important than our family, right? The man cut her off. That isn't what I was going to say, she said sternly. You don't have to fucking say it, Asuka. Your actions have made that very fucking clear. Once the boys turn 15, I'm leaving you and the commission. I want nothing to do with either of you," he said, fed up. Asuka narrowed her eyes. "Don't act like you're innocent, Haru. You can run and blame me all you want, but we both know that you're just as bad. Don't forget that you helped me. We did this together. So if I'm going down, then you're going down with me." She growled. "You tricked me. You said no one would get hurt. You said we were stopping him, not killing him. I trusted you, and you made a murderer. How could I not blame you for that?" He yelled. "It had to be done. He betrayed the commission. You haven't even seen what he was hiding from them. From us. Look, it's all right here." She pointed behind her. "What could have been so important that he had to die?" Haru said, trying to keep his emotions in check. Asuka turned around to grab a large envelope. Her eyes widened, seeing that the envelope was gone. She turned back to her husband, now panicked. "Where is it?" she yelled, her fear slowly seeping in. "Where's what?" Haru said over her bullshit. "The envelope with his research. The commission officials are coming to collect it soon." She panicked. Haru cursed angrily. "God damn it, woman. How can you be so careless at your age?" The two frantically began looking for it when Haru froze up. Asuka grew angry, seeing her husband doing nothing. "What are you just standing around for?" she yelled, frustrated. He ignored her. "Izuku, how long have you been standing there?" Haru asked shakily. Izuku just stood in the doorway, not saying a word. Asuka went pale as she noticed the room shaking. Things started to float around him, his eyes white and full of hatred and anger. "Izuku, where is the envelope? Give it here, please. It's not a toy." Asuka desperately begged. She took a step forward, and the carpet set ablaze in front of her. Haru pulled the woman back as she looked at Izuku in shock. What? But how?" she said in fear. Izuku tried to calm down. Please, let us explain. I didn't mean for things to end up like this. I planned on telling you and Izuki, I swear." Haru tried to reason with him. "Izuka, how much did you hear? You can't tell anyone, please. If you do, they'll come for us. We'll do anything. We have connections with the commission. We can guarantee you and Izuki a spot in UA when you're older." Asuka desperately offered. Haru looked at her in disbelief. "What is wrong with you? Are you trying to get a child to hide an assassination?" "He's 5. Something snapped in the boy. He had to get rid of them. They were a threat to Izuki." Izuku held up his hand, and the envelope he was holding disappeared. Asuka's eyes widened, and out of fear and desperation, tried to attack him. "Give it back to me, you little shit. Wait." Haru yelled at her, but it was too late. Izuku raised his hand, and Asuka burst into flames. She screamed and thrashed around in pain. She slammed herself against the walls before falling to the ground and rolling around. No matter what she did, the flames only grew stronger and stronger. Haru backed away in fear and knocked over several things trying to get away. "Izuku, please, we're sorry, Dash." Haru burst into flames and dropped to his knees as he screamed in pain. He suddenly became enraged and jumped on Asuka, clawing at her. "This is all your fault. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you," he screamed. They both screamed out in pain, fear, and anger. It was like something straight from hell. Izuku's nose started to bleed, and he simply wiped it away as the angry flames grew. He had no idea how he was doing this, but he didn't care. He wanted to make them pay for what they did. He wanted revenge. He wanted them to bleed. This is what they deserve. They took everything away from us. I won't let them hurt you too. Please don't be mad at me, Izuki. I did this for you. I kept my promise." Izuku could feel Izuki enter the house and took a few steps back. "Izuku." I opened my eyes and gently touched my throbbing head. The things I was making float as I slept immediately dropped to the ground. My eyes finally cleared up, and I realized I wasn't alone. Aizawa, Kaken, Shochan, and Chiyo stood around my bed looking concerned and scared. Some things looked burnt and still had small flames. I felt something and looked down. Izuki had his head in my lap as he tightly hugged my waist. He suddenly shot up and looked around frantically as he cried. We made eye contact and immediately clung to each other. I was not sure what to do to calm him down. I remembered the way Dad would place his forehead on ours and hum a lullaby he made for us. I tried to do it, but had to stop several times due to my damaged throat. Even so, it seemed to work, and Izuki calmed down. I wiped the tears from his eyes and saw that his nose was bleeding. "Bleed?" I whined out, panicked. Izuki looked at me confused before his eyes widened. "Izuku, your nose is bleeding." He started to try and wipe it away, but his hands were trembling too much. Kaken and Shochan got over their shock and came over. They used the tissues from the box beside our bed. Once that was taken care of and we calmed down, we continued to cling to each other. "What's going on?" Izuki asked. "You tell us, because I don't know what the fuck that was," Kaken said, sitting down. "Well, I would if I knew what fucking happened." Izuki angrily snapped, still on edge. Kaken frowned slightly before going back to his usual scowl. Izuki rested his head on my shoulder and looked down at our entwined hands guiltily. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell at you. Izuki mumbled quietly. It's fine. I could have worded that differently. Kaken sighed and Shochan patted his shoulder. I'm going to check their vitals and prepare to run a few tests to be safe. You can explain it to them, Chiyo said, closing the curtain and walking away. Aizawa sighed. I'm not sure what happened exactly. I think Izuka had a nightmare and he was using his quirk. You were sleeping fine until Izuka started to whine. You both held on to each other while sleeping and used your quirks simultaneously. He explained. What I saw wasn't a nightmare, it was a memory. Of the day our dad died, Izuki said quietly, and I whined at the memory. He then looked up at me. Was it the monsters again? He asked me. I shook my head. No, fire. Izuki frowned. Why are we remembering these things now? That can't be a coincidence, Shochan said in deep thought. I see. Hot, can you not with the fucking conspiracy theories right now? And not about this. Bakugo glared at him. I didn't mean it that way. Shochan frowned. Izuka dreamt about family that died in front of him. As soon as he started dreaming about that, Izuki also dreamt about a family member that died in front of him. They happened simultaneously, not to mention the weird way their quirks merged. Shochan explained. I hadn't even thought about that, Kaken mumbled. Wait, what do you mean merged? Aizawa said, confused. Well, Izuku can make things out of fire, and he can generate fire. But he can set things on fire unless he touches it or shoots fire at it. The same as me, but the curtains and chairs caught on fire by themselves. So it's like he and Izuku combined their quirks. Shochan further explained. Izuki and I squeezed each other's hand at the same time. We then looked at each other confused. Why? Why'd you do that? We both asked at the same time. No, I don't know. We both said simultaneously again. Kaken groaned. Not that weird twin telepathy shit again. I thought you broke out of that phase. We did. This time Izuki laughed, and I cracked a small smile at the weird coincidence. Aizawa just shook his head at us, and everyone chuckled. The mood was lightened, but then I saw Dad's face flash in my mind. Then the memories of what happened when I was unconscious came back. Izuki noticed me trembling in anger and squeezed my hand. He looked at me concerned, and his eyes flickered in response to mine's. The hell? Kaken said as everyone looked at us. I squeezed my eyes shut and calmed myself down. Sorry, I said quietly. Aizawa, what's going on with you lately? You've never been this angry, let alone emotional before. It's always around their anniversary too. What aren't you telling me? We promised no secrets, not between us, Izuki said quietly. I whined, panicking slightly. I don't want to make Izuki sad. Everything I do is for him. If he wants to know, then I have no choice but to tell him. But I don't want him to hate me when he learns the truth. I don't know what to do. What am I supposed to do? Izuki sniffed, and I felt pain in my chest as it grew tighter. I frantically whined as I tried to get him to stop crying. Kaken stood up and pushed the others out of the room. No cry. I begged desperately, no cry. Izuki wiped his eyes, but the tears wouldn't stop. I pulled him closer, and he cried against my shoulder. I'm sorry. It's just that dream and now this and Dad's anniversary coming up, and Aizawa, it's too much. Why did they have to take him from us? Why did Mom change so much? Why did that fire start? It's not fair. You're all I have left, but you don't even talk to me anymore. You didn't tell me about Mom. You won't tell me about Dad, and you won't tell me what happened with the fire. I love you so much, and I want to help you. I want to be a good brother, but I can't if you don't tell me what's wrong. Why can't you trust me? If I did something, just tell me so I can fix it. Please, Aizawa, I can't lose you too. Without you, I have nothing. We've always been together. You've always been my everything, but it feels like we're growing apart. Izuki started to break down in my arms. I wanted to explain. I wanted to tell him that it wasn't his fault, that he did nothing wrong, but I can't. I can't talk and I can't sign because he can't see it. I don't know what to do. Why can't I do anything? Stop. My throat burned and I could taste blood, but I don't care. Why you didn't do anything? I'm sorry. I am sorry. I started to cough as my throat squeezed shut and blood filled my mouth. Izuki started panicking. Izuka W8. Stop. You don't talk anymore. Recovery girl. I hunched over and healed my throat as I choked. I kept the door from opening as the doorknob rattled and shook my head. Izuki was hesitant, but eventually told them we were okay. Izuki said worriedly as he rubbed my back. Okay. I panted. Okay. Izuka, why would you hurt yourself like that? Izuki yelled at me. I wanted you to stop crying. I signed. Well, now I'm crying more. You scared the shit out of me. I thought you were going to choke to death. He yelled, wiping his eyes. He pulled me into a tight hug, and I hugged back. After a few minutes, we pulled apart. Sorry. I looked down guilty, You couldn't see me signing. I didn't know what else to do. I just wanted to help. I signed. Something wet dripped onto my hands and I touched my face. I felt something wet and started to panic. Leaking. Leaking. I yelled, wiping my face off. Izuki started to laugh and I whined, looking at him. He started to wipe my face with his shirt. Did you forget that you could cry too? Izuki softly smiled. I nodded shamefully. I haven't cried in so long. I didn't know that I still could. A monster like me shouldn't be capable of crying. I mumbled. What? Izuki asked. If you want to know, I'll tell you everything.